The Reign of Terror. Alassane Ouattara thinks he can rule Côte d'Ivoire through fear. The Reign of Terror. That sinister chapter in French history, opened in the wake of the 1789 revolution, immediately evokes the guillotine erected in the public square, the head of Louis XVI falling into the sawdust, followed by that of Marie Antoinette, and then the relentless rise of Saint-Just, Robespierre, and other apostles of armed virtue. A cruel irony. In this era supposedly meant to liberate, the executioners ended up following one another to the scaffold, each devoured by the very machinery of fear he had set in motion. In Côte d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara seems intent on replaying the same play. Aware that the loathing he inspires has reached a peak, and that the people categorically reject his illegal fourth term, he imagines that he can save his throne through fear, repression, and organized violence. True to his old addiction to political brutality, he believes terror is still a reliable weapon. Remember, since his entry into politics in the 1990s, he has always chosen the truncheon over the outstretched hand. 1991, bloody repression at the Yopougon University residence, where students were beaten, raped, and killed. February 18, 1992, hunt for opponents, arrest and imprisonment of Laurent Gbagbo, and the beating of protesters.
Forces fearing democratic openness organized, and on Tuesday, February 18, 1992, a brutal crackdown fell on the Democrats.
In May 1991, at the Yopougon University campus, a police raid was ordered by the FURPAC, which felt the students were overdoing it, and so they wanted to show them what they were doing.
They beat up students, and it traumatized everyone. And we took to the streets. We demonstrated and we persuaded President Houphouët to establish a commission of inquiry.
It was led by Magistrate Camille Adji, and composed by the government, by Houphouët himself. The conclusions were damning.
The responsibility of General Guihi's army at the time, he was the one in charge, he was the chief of staff, had been clearly identified.
The commission submitted the conclusions of its work to the President of the Republic. The latter felt he could not turn his own knife against himself.
In February 1992, we took to the streets again to demand that the soldiers be punished.
Among the marchers were FESI students, because at the same time, the trial of their Secretary General, Marcel Ahipo, was to be held at the courthouse.
We weren't even next to the courthouse. We weren't even in that convoy, in that line. We had already seen the cars burning from a long way away. That's because cars had already been prepared to be burned.
Our march was violently dispersed. They fired live ammunition.
I took my jeep to crisscross the plateau. I noticed that the FPS Secretary General's vehicle was parked near the RAN. However, the vehicle was empty. At the Soji Faya building, the guard called me to tell me that the FPI dignitaries were in the basement. It was at that same moment that the soldiers arrived. I noticed they were pointing a weapon in our direction, so I had the building open to retrieve the FBI Secretary General, and I was in military uniform. I offered my body as a shield, and then he got behind me. I moved forward to place him in the back of the jeep, because it was almost pressed against the gate, and to ensure the rear security of the vehicle, I put Captain Bat in the jeep. Today, he is a colonel. I revved up the jeep and drove him to the higher command to present him to the senior commander, General Tani.
I was less lucky because it was soldiers who found me. I was with 4 or 5 other people. We had taken refuge in offices in a building, and they found us there. They took us to the military camp on the plateau, and we were beaten up like crazy. Once again, they listened to the soldiers' comments on their radio, and discovered where they had taken us, and the treatment they were inflicting on us. They were the ones who came and rescued us from the soldiers. But I had fainted from the beatings.
Cette marche a commencé avec 200 ou 300 personnes environ qui étaient.
This march began with about 200 or 300 people, most of whom were armed with all kinds of weapons, clubs, stones, axes, etc. All opposition party leaders who participated in today's demonstrations and were caught red-handed destroying property have been arrested, and legal proceedings will continue. Law enforcement has received all the necessary instructions to carry out its work with the necessary composure.
Les forces de l'ordre ont reçu toutes les instructions nécessaires pour faire leur travail.
Was Mr. Gbagbo caught red-handed destroying property?
Certainly. You saw it, and several people saw it, I believe, this morning.
5 soldiers burned Mr. Gbagbo's car. What do you think about that?
5 soldiers burned Mr. Gbagbo's car. Were you there? Did you see them? I prefer to have proof first.
Nothing has changed. The methods of yesterday are the weapons of today. After the charade staged in Yopougon to intimidate the opposition, here he is now handing out hastily drafted summonses to key leaders of the PPACI, attempting to muzzle them before they can demonstrate against his constitutional coup. These include former Defense Minister Moise Lida Kouassi, Ambassador Kony Boubacar, Customs Colonel Joel Kiki, Damana Picasse, Blaise Lazim, Koha Justin and Dehi Nestor, all close to President Laurent Gbagbo. He convinces himself that once again, fear will be enough to make Ivorians bend. But he is gravely mistaken. History is clear, no people, however martyred, remains forever imprisoned by the chains of fear. One day, those chains break. And when that day comes, it is brutal, final, and fatal for the tyrant. This time, the Ivorian people say no, definitively. And in this tragedy now unfolding, Ouattara would do well to reflect on the fate of Robespierre. The master of the guillotine always ends up placing his own head upon it. The leading radicals of the French Reign of Terror. Maximilien Robespierre, ideological leader, advocating armed virtue and the ruthless elimination of the revolution's enemies. Louis-Antoine de Saint-Just, Robespierre's right-hand man, an uncompromising doctrinaire, nicknamed the Archangel of Terror. Georges Couthon, loyal ally of Robespierre, organizer of swift political trials. Jacques-Nicolas Billaud-Varenne, member of the Committee of Public Safety, supporter of extreme measures and mass purges. Chris Yapi does not lie. Find Chris Yapi on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.